Welcome back to the Health Hunt podcast, a human, humble, and humorous exploration of how to level up your health. I'm Sandi, joined by my co-host Dan, and today you have landed on part 2 of our sleep series.
If you missed last week's episode, I basically aired all my sleep dirty laundries between specialists with tongue twister titles, not so sexy mouth guards, and a Darth Vader worthy APAP machine.
Yep. And today, I'm taking my turn in the sleep confessional. I'll share what's actually helped me with my sleep struggles, the habits, the mindset shifts, the experiments, and the things that totally flopped. Because we want you to know you're not alone in figuring this stuff out. This is real life, not a wellness highlight reel.
So as we like to say, grab your drink of choice, or if you have magnesium glycinate or magnesium in general, grab that too, or just your curiosity. Let's get into this.
Okay, wait, but before we get into it, just that quick disclaimer to cover our asses. The Health Hunt podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We're not medical professionals, and nothing shared should be considered medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health. All right, so now we're going to get into it. So I'm no stranger to those nights of watching the clock tick down towards my alarm going off and doing this mental math, because I love math, about how many hours of sleep I have left. And then catastrophizing the next day and worrying about how much sleep I didn't get and how horrible the next day was going to go. As anyone who's listening knows, it's a really horrible feeling and you kind of feel powerless. But the good news is that in the last couple of years, I've actually found a number of things that have really improved my sleep, especially my ability to fall asleep, because that was always a very tricky thing for me. And I'm actually falling asleep much more quickly. So I really wanted to share those things with our listeners today in case they're helpful. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background on me and my sleeping habits, I'm a very light sleeper. I can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up feeling exhausted. I don't really feel like I go into a deep sleep that often. And in the morning, sometimes when I fall back to sleep, I go into a little bit of a coma and I wake up a little bit groggy, but generally I don't feel like I get a lot of good quality sleep. But if I'm not getting good sleep, it may mean that I'm missing the restorative factor of sleep. So before we sort of get too deep into my personal sleep saga, I think it helps to know what exactly happens when we sleep.
Right. Because as I touched on in my sleep story, sleep isn't just lights out. It's more like your body running a nightly software update.
We want our listeners to walk away with some useful information over here at the Health Hunt. So we're going to quickly explain the different stages of sleep. And I've on occasion been called human Google, but we actually did some real research here just to help make sure that we're on point with everything. So there's 4 main stages, and we cycle through them every 4 to 6 times a night. Each cycles are roughly around 90 minutes. So this is actually interesting, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
So full disclosure, I am a sleep stage geek. I use my Ultra 2 Apple Watch, and I really every morning geek out, and it's something I look forward to. So let's jump into stage 1. And that is what we quote as the I'm not sleeping, I'm just resting my eyes phase. So you're kind of still half awake, easy to wake up from that in stage 1. Your muscles start to chill out a little bit. This is the light sleep stage. This is that mystical transition from wakefulness, as they call it, to sleep that we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah, and I'm actually really blown away. We talked about kind of you just, all of a sudden you're awake and then you're getting sleepy and then nothing happens after that you can identify. And then you wake up.
Totally crazy.
Okay, so next we have stage 2, which is the deeper light sleep. And what happens here is that your heart rate and your body temperature drop, and it actually makes up about half of your total light sleep. It's kind of like your body's warm up for the real repair work. But it is actually the key for physical restoration and memory processing.
Which happens in stage 3, the deep or slow wave sleep. That's when your body does all the rebuilding and repairing. Muscles, tissues, immune system, you name it. Adults usually get around 15 to 20% of their sleep here. It's typically the most physically restorative part of sleep, and it usually happens early in the night, mostly in the first 2 sleep cycles. Mine, without question, the purple on the apple is always in the first hour or 2. So that's 100%.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm always in the market for some good sleep restoration, so deep sleep is where it's at. And then there's stage 4, the REM stage, which is rapid eye movement sleep. This is when your brain goes into movie-making mode. It's where you're dreaming, emotional processing, memory organization happens, and it's roughly about 20 to 25% of your total sleep.
And when Sandi said the REM stage, that was not the band, so it's not to turn on any of their soundtracks or their music. It's rapid eye movement. alone. No music there. So basically, if you're only getting 5 hours of sleep, you're cutting your brain's movie short and skipping the body repair scenes.
Exactly. So you really need those 7 to 9 hours so your body can run through all the stages properly. The deep repair early on and the vivid REM towards morning. So here's a fun fact. It's not just how much you sleep. It's when you wake up that really matters.
Because sleep happens in these 90-minute cycles, as Sandi has been talking about, like chapters in a book. So if you wake up in the middle of a chapter, your brain's basically like, wait, what? We aren't done here.
That's why some people actually feel better with 7.5 rather than 8 hours of sleep, because there's 5 complete sleep cycles rather than 4 and a middle cycle. So waking up at the end of the cycle means you're in a lighter sleep, so it's easier to feel alert and refreshed.
Whereas, big word right there, if your alarm goes off in the middle of deep sleep, it's like getting yanked out of a dream sequence with no closing credits. I mean, all these movies and music references, I'm sorry, but especially if you wake up during deep sleep, you'll feel groggy, disoriented, or hungover, even if you technically got enough hours of sleep, as Sandi had just talked about.
I mean, if I'm going to be hungover, I really wish that there had been tequila the previous night.
There you go.
So if you ever wonder why you feel awful after what you would think is enough sleep, it might just be bad timing. So some food for thought. And I heard this a little while ago, and I just thought it was really interesting as someone who could sleep for 10 hours and not feel rested. It might have something to do with the spot in the cycle in which I'm waking up. And that's why I'm waking up feeling groggy. So as Dan was mentioning, there's actually a lot of ways that you can track your sleep stages. And one of the easiest and most convenient, and the way that I do it, and obviously as Dan mentioned, he does it, is our watches. I just actually use the basic health app on my phone, but there's a lot of third-party apps that provide additional insight, but a lot of them also have an extra cost. So I thought it would be interesting to, and I've been diligently tracking my sleep leading up to this podcast. And so I wanted to kind of share the results of my sleep from last night. So of the 8 hours I'm trying to get, I got about 7.5 hours of sleeping. That's not terrible. And this includes the following. Okay, so 28 minutes of being awake, and that has to do with my dog barking at me. 2 hours and 10 minutes of REM sleep. So that's about 30% of my total sleeping time, which is actually pretty good because if you recall a few minutes ago, we shared that typical is 20 to 25%. 4 hours and 36 minutes of core sleep. So in the context of the 4 stages we talked about, I'm referencing core sleep because that's what my watch tells me. But the core sleep is basically stage 2, which is the deeper light sleep. And then stage 3, a little bit of REM mixed in, which is about 60% of my sleeping time. And then 45 minutes of deep sleep, which is only 10% of my sleeping time. So that's below normal because as I mentioned, it's about, deep sleep is typically between 15 and 20%. So obviously a sleep tracker on your watch isn't recording information with 100% accuracy. And so if you take the REM and the deep sleep, I'm getting like a respectable amount because that takes me kind of closer to the average, obviously, unless my dog is barking at me.
I think that my numbers line up very similar percentage-wise. And I think it's a really good idea to track your sleep, not as for accuracy, but more as how you're trending over time. So this is good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I always knew about the apps, but I didn't always pay attention to them, because we kind of talked about before. In the last episode, I didn't really think I could do that much about my sleep. So tracking it didn't really seem that important. But when I started to, especially understanding more about the sleep stages, it's quite interesting. Just as an aside too, because there's a lot of features that these apps have, they can report on your sleeping respiratory rate, and that's how many breaths you take per minute while sleeping. And it's relevant because it's a window into how calm or stressed your body really is. The rate naturally slows down when you're relaxed and sleeping deeply. If it's higher than usual during the night, it could sort of signal that your nervous system is on alert, and that could obviously be due to a number of factors. But for most adults, normal sleeping respiratory rate is around 12 to 20 breaths per minute. So last night, mine was between 17 and 22. The higher rates were only for a short duration right before I woke up. So maybe I was sort of already in a state of thinking about all the things I had to do that day, and it was causing me a little bit of stress. And then finally, you can also track your heart rate while you're sleeping. Mine last night was 71 to 86 beats per minute. Your sleeping heart rate is one of the best indicators of how well your body's actually resting and recovering overnight. So it's an interesting metric to look at. Think of it kind of like your body's nightly check-in. When it drops nice and low, your system's relaxing and repairing, which is what you want. When it's higher, your body's basically saying, I'm still working on something here. So, maybe there's something to address. And for most adults, a sleeping heart rate between 40 and 60 beats per minute is typical. So I'm a little bit above that. But what really matters is not your one night, it's sort of what your baseline is. And so it's not about hitting a perfect number. It's more about consistency. And if your average suddenly spikes, your body's sort of waving a red flag that something is off. And so it gives you an indication that maybe you need to examine your stress, or maybe you had some wine or too much scrolling before bed.
I'll say this. I'll say that as it relates to sleep apnea and my obstructive sleep apnea, and don't quote me on this, and we'll have experts to validate this, but my heart rate when I was having apneas, AHIs, was upwards of like 70, 80, 90 beats per minute while I was sleeping. And so that's like your heart. It's like you're running as you're sleeping, and you're putting so much stress on your heart. So these 40 to 60 beats, but this is very relevant to me. And this is a very important metric. So I agree. I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we don't really think about what's happening during sleep and how that is telling us something about our health, at least that we need to look into something. So as I started to look into this, I also thought it was quite interesting. Before we move on, I wanted to share one thing that I literally just learned this week because it's fascinating. So I've previously kind of made fun of people who say, I only need 4 hours of sleep and I'm super productive and I work all day and I'm awesome and I worked out and, I made breakfast for the kids and we had all kinds of meals. And in any event, I actually learned that there is a mutation that some people have where they can actually thrive on 4 to 6 hours of sleep. So I'm not going to get deep into the weeds on how this works. It's interesting. If you want, you can look it up. But I just need to say I'm very jealous because if I could cut down on sleep, it would be like manufacturing hours in the day.
Yeah, I mentioned this portion in part of my podcast for sleep about this kind of false bravado. This like I'm working at no hours of sleep, and I'm functioning great, or I'm getting so much done, and it's this badge. But I guess now, Sandi, you've just made me realize that there's legitimate superheroes out there, as we call soups. I guess we can call this the new Justice League for sleep. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's still some people who actually need more sleep and are just saying they don't, and maybe they're being obnoxious, but there's a legitimate number of people that can thrive on little sleep. So again, I'm jealous. I got to go find out how do you get this gene, this mutation, and manufacture time. Okay, so if you've listened to previous episodes, I have alluded to some sleep issues that I'm having, and they're not my actual problem. I have 3 French bulldogs. The oldest is 11, and she's recently developed what we believe is doggy dementia. And so that actually means all of her sleep cycles that we talked about, and we'll get into more about how that works, are amiss. And so sometimes she's actually awake all night yelling at me, and then she'll fall asleep, if I'm lucky, and then wake up at 3 a.m. barking because her medication wore off. So that's obviously grossly affecting my sleep, and I've been feeling it. It's out of my control. So I'm kind of like a zombie during the day. And then I also actually have another French bulldog who's in a wheelchair and has to sleep in a cone at night so he doesn't chew off his toes. And so he often has complaints. So this is my life. In addition to all the great things that I'm going to tell you about that help me with sleep, the dogs have sort of interfered.
For everyone out there, I just want to interject that Sandi is in the 1% of 1% as far as good dog owners. Those dogs are very lucky to have someone like her. They have a lot of issues, and she is constantly trying to address these issues. And it's we're going to have a podcast about just the dogs and dog health, dog insurance. But this is she's to be commended, and as are all good dog owners out there. So.
Well, they're lucky. They're very cute, so they get to stay. Okay, so now I will talk about what has been helpful over time for me, but I thought it would be interesting to maybe start off, because I like to sometimes do bad news, good news, with what didn't work for me. Okay, and I'm bringing these up because these are suggestions. Like, these actually might work for someone, but these are the things that didn't work for me. So when you're researching the things that you're supposed to do when you're sleeping or when you're trying to get good sleep, one of the things that always comes up is that you're supposed to keep your bedroom at a cold temperature. And so what they recommend is between 60 and 65 degrees. And this just makes me want to die when I hear it. Just to give you a perspective, originally, I think I mentioned this in the episode where I talked about my story. I'm from Canada, but I moved to South Florida to get away from the cold because it felt like torture to me. So now I've been here long enough and I'm acclimated. So when it's below 75 degrees, my brain tells me that it's sweater weather. Canada's embarrassed of Florida me, but so far nobody's asked for the passport back. So in any event, for me, the cold room is just not something that is comfortable for me. I think I have my temperature on about like 74 degrees and I'm still chilly. So when I'm cold, I'm actually uncomfortable and it hinders me in falling to sleep.
That is so fascinating. I mean, that alone, that little fact, and then, obviously this is for you. I mean, I'm at 68 to 70. I have the fan on blast and I am in, and I'll probably mention this a couple times today or whenever, I'm in this bed burrito where I roll up and it is like this, like it is legitimately a taco in there. And I don't move. And unless I have to go get up, but like if it's anything more than 70 degrees, I'm in trouble. So this is fascinating, but each their own. And this is exactly the point.
Yeah, I'm just a person that's generally cold. And so like I feel like even if I had 4 blankets on, I still wouldn't be comfortable. And then I would just be aware of how cold I was. So, but the point of bringing this up is that the sleep temperature is actually very important because too hot or too cold is going to disrupt your sleep. So for everyone, they sort of have to find the optimal one. For people that sleep hot, they can get cooling sheets or, cooling mattresses. When I was a kid, it's probably not safe now, but growing up in Canada, we had electric blankets, which I believe are now a fire hazard, but they were super toasty. So
those are dope. I remember
good.
that. When I was like 10, or this is really weird actually, it just made me think of this. When I was like 10 or 12, I used to go and I'm from Wisconsin, Sandy's from Canada, so we're from cold environments. I used to go lay and fall asleep against the dryer. We were drying.
Oh.
The front of it was really hot, so I used to sit and take a nap and bring a blanket, and it was just like, because it was like the warmest thing, and I don't know, it made me just think about that. And so, random thought, has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but weird place I fell asleep when I was 10.
I kind of wish that I had tried that because my parents kept the thermostat really low. We were freezing wintertime, so I had multiple blankets and heated blankets. Okay, so the next thing is, like, we're going to talk about supplementation because there are a lot of good sleep aids. I have tried melatonin, which a lot of people have probably heard of to fall asleep, but it wasn't a good match for me because I would feel sleepy and sometimes it would cause me to drift off, or I would just feel sleepy and I wouldn't fall asleep. But the bigger problem was that it was leaving me very, very groggy in the morning, which is the opposite of what I am trying to achieve. I also tried, just sort of let you know, something called valerian root, and that's supposed to relax you. But same thing. I mean, it just made me groggy in the morning. And so I just want, because people have probably heard of melatonin, and actually I needed a refresher into exactly how it all works. So we're just going to share a little bit of information about melatonin and why it's important to the body. So melatonin is a hormone that your body naturally produces. So in theory, you shouldn't need to supplement it. And its main role is to regulate your sleep-wake cycle or circadian rhythm. And I mentioned, like, my dog, her sleep-wake cycle is just a mess. And I'm actually giving her melatonin at night. And that seems to help a little bit. So for her, she doesn't have a job. So if she wakes up groggy, it's fine. So when it's dark, your brain increases melatonin production to tell your body and your mind that it's time to wind down. And then when it's light, the production of melatonin drops. So you stay alert. So that's kind of why you've probably heard also that blue light from phones and TVs can interfere with sleep, because what it's actually doing is it's suppressing the melatonin release. So if your body isn't producing enough, or perhaps the timing is off, then you can supplement. But sort of like I said, when I was doing some research, I was curious about the effects that I was having, and that grogginess, vivid dreams, and headaches are actually some side effects of melatonin. And so, we were talking about waking up feeling hungover or foggy. That's one of the things that can happen.
That's also really important, although it's not like directly applicable to this, is why there's so much going on. Our 3 listeners who listen to any podcasts or like are just getting general health information, that waking up early in the morning and taking that walk in the morning and getting that sunlight turns off the melatonin production, tells your body, and it's circadian rhythm, but tells your body to stop producing that melatonin. And so that's another kind of important thing that people should be doing, but we'll talk about that some other.
Yeah. And so for some reason, we keep mentioning hungover. So speaking of that, I also went through a red wine phase, which was basically like a gigantic overpour glass of wine before bed. And it seemed necessary because I was dealing with very stressful work situations. And I sort of thought it was working because it would make me sleepy and it would help to quiet my mind. But what I noticed is that if I did actually fall asleep, I did not stay asleep, or I felt like I was in a very light sleep. And so again, I was curious to see if other people had the same experience. So we did a little bit of research. So the reason that alcohol seems to help at first, and it's again in line with what I just said, is that it's a central nervous system depressant. So it can make you feel relaxed and sleepy and help you fall asleep. It can also help turn off intrusive thoughts. However, as my experience shows, the problem's not falling asleep, it's staying asleep and getting quality rest. So what's happening is that alcohol interferes with the sleep stages that we talked about. Some of them are very important. The REM sleep, the stage tied to memory, learning, and emotional regulation, and then the deep sleep, these are, the gold standard of sleep stages, it's interfering with those. And so you might get more deep sleep early in the night, but then REM is really reduced, leading to a rebound effect later. Your brain wakes you up more often during the second half of the night. The result is you feel, you wake up feeling not refreshed, foggy, and anxious. And then a couple other things that it does in the body. It raises your heart rate and body temperature. And we just talked about your sleep conditions. You want your temperature to be comfortable. So if you normally sleep at a certain temperature with certain types of blankets, if you're running hot, then it's going to wake you up. And then also it can fragment sleep because it actually causes micro arousals. So little times that you wake up that break your sleep cycle and interfere with you getting that full important sleep cycle. And then as Dan might be able to share with you, it can actually exacerbate snoring or obstruction of sleep with sleep apnea.
No doubt about it.
I'm sure you've had that. And then just because we talked about melatonin, it does actually suppress melatonin. So then it's throwing your sleep cycle off.
So Sandi, just to be clear, you went from red wine to tequila. Is that how it went for you?
Pretty much.
Okay. I was a tequila guy, and now I'm really basic. I'm like a beer or actually a high noon. So there we go.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
But generally speaking, I kind of alcohol completely wrecks my sleep. One of the biggest improvements I've made in the sleep quality perspective is just to cut it out. And so I'm thinking I have between 2 and 4 drinks a month most. It's not part of my lifestyle. And if I'm going to drink, I will drink earlier in the night and then have a lot of water. Whether that works or not, it just seems to work for me. I guess maybe someone told me that once. Honestly, just to sum this up, I think alcohol is the new smoking, much bigger topic. It's really bad for you, but and if you can limit it, you should. I know that sounds really boring and we're not fun anymore, but what can I tell you?
We're just delivering the news, but we're not actually the fun police. So if you want to drink, fine. We're just kind of letting you know how you can set it up so that maybe it doesn't ruin your sleep. Okay, so now for the fun stuff. There is good news because, as I mentioned before, dog issues notwithstanding, I have had some significant improvements in my sleep. And so I wanted to share those. And again, these aren't going to work for everybody, but they're going to maybe give you some food for thought on things that you could try if you haven't already. And I think it's helpful that I'm sharing an experience that actually worked for me. So the first one, and I think this is actually the biggest change that I've made that has helped the most. So I have always had partners in my bedroom that think that they can't sleep if they don't fall asleep with the TV on. And so I was also someone, I like to watch TV in bed before I went to bed, but I did like to turn the TV off. But again, certain people think that they need to sleep with the TV on. And what I realized was happening was that if I fell asleep with the TV on, whoever was next to me thought that I was asleep, but in my mind, I was being tortured because I was aware of the light from the TV. I could hear the sound, the story was getting in my head, and I would just feel crazy. And then at some point I would sit up and I would scream, "Turn off the TV." And, again, this person would be shocked that from a deep sleep monster Sandi came out. But I felt so anxious and agitated. And the more important part is that I was very aware that I was not asleep because I remember what was happening in the movie. That was a huge problem for me. And so one thing that I'm doing now is I'm not turning my TV on in bed so that I don't potentially fall asleep with the TV. But there's also a little bit more that happens. And this is, again, for me, this is just my experience. But when I watch TV in bed, first of all, obviously the blue light, we talked about melatonin production. So the blue light is, your brain thinks it's still sunny outside and it's still time to be awake. And so you're not producing the melatonin that tells your body to go to sleep. But also, I think what was also happening was that, well, first of all, I might be very excited about a show that I was watching. And so I didn't want to turn it off. And that's obviously going to stop me from going to sleep. But also, I think there was a level of overstimulation between the sounds, the sights, and the storyline that when I would go to sleep, I was still sort of experiencing it all. I could feel that my brain was hyperactive. And so I used to, when I was watching TV in bed, have a very hard time falling asleep. So now, like I said, I make a conscious effort that when I go into bed, I'm not turning on the TV.
That sounds right. But it's super interesting. I actually know people personally who can't fall asleep unless the TV is on. They drift off to the noise of the TV. So again, each their own. But this made me think of how I use TV today. I have a TV in my bedroom and I go to YouTube and I've somehow found this niche on YouTube of jacuzzi sounds, jacuzzi bubbles, nature sounds. There's even one where there's a silent walking tour where people don't say anything and they have a camera and it's pouring rain and they're walking through the streets of their city. And these noises just for whatever, lull me to sleep. And some of these are so sophisticated that they even have like timers after the first 5 minutes, like the jacuzzi bubbles will be going and the TV screen actually turns to black. It turns it off.
Oh, so that solves the issue. That's really cool. Because I was going to say you could just listen through a speaker or something on YouTube.
Right. And so I start watching these visuals and it lulls me to sleep. And by the time I'm out, the screen is already black. And so these people are really producing interesting content for people that are able to have, like, who do need white noises and sounds. Like, these work. And so I don't know. I'd love to hear from other people if they're doing the same thing. But I don't think I'm the only person seeing these things. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And so along the lines of TV is really the mini TV that you stare at all day, which is your phone. And so I think everyone's probably heard you're not supposed to look at your phone in bed or when you're about to go to sleep. And I have to admit, I am not good at doing that. I just, for whatever, because I'm not watching TV. I do read sometimes before I go to sleep, but for whatever reason, I feel like I need to look at plants on Instagram to go to sleep. And so because I haven't been able to train myself out of that yet, one of the things that I'm doing, I have to use reading glasses. So when I get the lenses, I have a blue light blocker in them. And I've also, there's a setting that you probably maybe know about or don't, but on your phone, you can change the tone and the warmth of your screen. And so I make it warmer to reduce the blue light. So I should just put my phone away. In fact, I should probably put it in another room, which is, I know what they recommend, but this is my sort of solution to that. And I'm finding, again, it's without the TV, the phone isn't really preventing me from falling asleep.
I actually have a pair of what they call gaming glasses. They're the same thing. They're like orange tinted. Those, again, following science, I think that helps. But if I am kind of reading an article or listening to a podcast, listening to a podcast wouldn't be viewing it. But if I'm doing something visual on the phone before I go to sleep, which I shouldn't be doing, I'll put those on. It kind of makes me look like I'm like on a Blade Runner or something. I would never wear these out of my bedroom. They're very funny looking, but yeah, they work. They're pretty funny.
Well, you now know everybody wants to see them. So you're going to have to show up on an episode and maybe we'll put something on Instagram of you in the glasses.
Done. But you have them too, right? You mentioned something.
No, I mean my regular glasses. So I have astigmatism. So I have a pair of reading glasses because I don't like progressives. And I also have a pair for distance at nighttime. So when you order them, you can choose to add the blue light blocker. So pretty much any glasses that I have some sort of blue light blocking in them, which I guess is helpful.
So you're pretty fancy. I just got my first pair of reading glasses and, from Amazon, like the box of 4 for $10. And like I leave them all over the place. Like I have not one pair of nice glasses. I should have progressives. But yes, I literally have a secondary pair of blue light gaming glasses that are $10 from Amazon that may or may not work.
Well, I don't know how you test that. $10. Well, you can't go wrong. Unless they don't work.
For sure.
So the other thing, again, along these lines is something that also helps is keeping my room really dark. And this is, again, if you've ever looked up how do you fall asleep, this is one of the things they recommend. So it's, you want to limit or really eliminate any blue light sources. So for example, I have a speaker that has a clock on it, but I turn the clock off. So I don't have that bright light. So anything that I can turn off or cover, I do. The other thing that I do that I think helps me is I use a red light in the middle of the night and also before I go to sleep. So I have a lamp beside my bed and it's Alexa, like a smart bulb enabled. And so I have it on red. So before I go to sleep, I turn off the overhead lights for some duration of time and I leave the red light on. But what really helps me is that because I'm dealing with these dogs, so I'm waking up all the time in the night and I need to deal with them or see what they're doing. If I was to turn the light on, the regular overhead bright light, it would really wake me up. But I just turn on the red light and I find that that's sort of allowing me to stay in a bit of a sleep state. So therefore, when I try and go back to sleep, it's much easier. And actually having the Alexa enabled lights helps as well because I don't have to go and think and find the light bulb. I find like when I start thinking, I wake up, which I think is because your brain is waking up. And so I'm able to just talk to the light bulb essentially and turn it on. So that's helping me as well.
Interesting. Didn't really, I don't know much about red light, but I'm going to take a dive into that. I didn't know, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, this is just a light bulb that I use. I put it on the red setting. This is not like the LED ones that you use for health and other things like that. It's just that it's because it's red, it doesn't have any blue in it. Right? It's a primary color. So it doesn't, so I'm turning it on and it's also not very bright. So it allows me to see the room enough. It's not telling my brain to wake up or anything like that.
Interesting. Cool.
So now we're going to move on to one of Dan and my favorite things. And you've probably heard us talk about it. We mention it, whether it's relevant or not, but for whatever reason, we're very excited about magnesium. And we'll explain why. You might think it's way too much excitement for a supplement, but if you know, you know. And if you don't, we're here to teach you. So we could do an entire episode on magnesium. I know we actually have talked about this. We probably will. But because there are so many types and each type has an important function that the body needs. But for the purpose of the sleep episode, we're going to highlight magnesium glycinate. So why should you care about this for your sleep?
Well, before you begin, I will say that I am nutty about this because if you're taking it at the right dose, it's like one of the few supplements that you can actually know works. You can actually feel something. It lulls me to sleep. I know it works. Take it before bedtime. And if I could, I may even do this. I'll create a magnesium glycinate t-shirt. Like I'll wear it around very, very often.
You gotta love that support.
Yep. Huge magnesium glycinate on the channel. I have Tourette's magnesium glycinate, the word. I will be saying it more and more often as we continue. Go ahead,
but I agree with you because we've talked about this sort of in conceptualizing this podcast, but I take a lot of supplements and I take a lot of them because I think they're supposed to be good for me, but I can't really tell you if there's a difference. If I miss them for a couple days, probably nothing happens. But magnesium, like you said, is one of those supplements that you actually feel and you know that it's helping you fall asleep. And when you don't take it, you're having trouble falling asleep. So that's why we're sort of geeking out about it. But so here's, why it's specific. And when you're looking for a supplement, if it's specific for sleep, you got to look for magnesium glycinate. The magnesium part supports hundreds of biochemical reactions in the body, including like your muscle function, nerve signaling, and energy production. The glycine part is the calming neurotransmitter that promotes relaxation and deep sleep. So that's really what's helping you fall asleep. The other part is helping sort of calm down other parts of your body, but really it's that calming effect that helps you fall asleep. So why is it so popular for sleep and stress, actually? It can help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. So you're getting all your sleep cycles in because it lowers cortisol. And we've kind of mentioned this. I think Dan talked about it a little bit before about cortisol spikes in the middle of the night and that being a cause to potentially wake you up. It promotes GABA activity, which is basically your brain's main calm down chemical. So you want that. It also may increase deep sleep. So I'm taking magnesium and maybe I'm not getting enough deep sleep, but I wonder if I would get any deep sleep without the magnesium. And we discussed sort of earlier, you really want that deep sleep. And it also soothes your nervous system because it supports the parasympathetic, that rest and digest state, again, which is where you want to be when you're trying to be relaxed. And it can actually reduce symptoms of anxiety, restlessness, and stress-related muscle tension. Because if you've got muscle tension, it's also going to stop you from really getting into a relaxed state. And then same thing, I was just kind of saying it, like it supports muscle and heart health. So it prevents cramps. I know some people get cramps at night, twitching and restless legs syndrome. It also promotes a steady heart rhythm and helps lower mild blood pressure. And also it's very gentle on the stomach. So if you've taken magnesium before and it gave you stomach upset, it could have been mixed with other types of magnesium, which are not as gentle. And so kind of as Dan was saying, it's also very important time when you take the magnesium. So the ideal time would be an hour to 2 before bed so that it can metabolize and get into your system. So I take a product that I got from my functional medicine doctor a little while ago. It's called Mag Complete. And it has bioavailable forms of many different types of magnesium. But because of the glycinate component, I take it before bed. So based on blood work and things, it was determined that I need different types of magnesium collectively, but because of the glycinate, it helps before bed. And also if I took it during the day, it would make me sleepy. So that's just something to kind of be aware of. And the other thing is that goes along with it, I think Dan might use this as well, but I use a magnesium spray before bed. So it's kind of like a magnesium oil and you spray it on your skin because it's very, it absorbs very well. And so you're getting, sort of a high dose of magnesium. So I tend to put it on my upper body, but I know a lot of people put it on their feet because that's supposed to be a highly absorbable area. And just so you know, if you try it, it sort of is like a salt water. So it can be a little bit itchy. So I would sort of maybe test it on your skin. It bothers me a little bit, but it helps me sleep. And so, I enjoy it. And just, we'll put it in the show notes, the link, but we have mentioned before, we have a full script store. And so these products from different brands, you can search around, would be on there and you can get up to a 25% discount.
I actually do not use the magnesium spray, but I'm curious about it. And I'm going to look into that. Very interesting. Yes. And the full script store, we have a full episode on that with supplements to come. But yes, magnesium important before bed. I take 400 milligrams. There is circulating a scale of how many milligrams you should optimally take based on age. It's pretty readily available. I can't think of off the top of my head, but 400 milligrams is top of the line, and that's for an adult male.
Okay. Do your research on your own dosage. Okay, so another thing that actually has really worked for me, and I probably started doing this, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. I've been very into meditation, and so I actually meditate in the morning first thing to sort of start off the day right. But what I found is that there are sleep meditations that help you fall asleep because you focus on, you listen to them and it helps you focus on parts of your body or your breathing or whatever that may be. And it takes you out of like being in your mind. And so there's apps. I like Insight Timer. The reason that they're sort of distinguished as sleep meditations, because they're designed to do certain things to sort of help you wind down and go to sleep, but also they tend to be longer in length. I tend to like a male British voice. I don't know why, but I find that soothing and relaxing. So that's what I listen to. And I have two that I kind of have on repeat. And every time I listen, I hear something new because I'd probably fallen asleep or, I was focusing on something. And so I actually find that they're just really helpful. And again, there's Insight Timer, but you can probably find them also on Spotify and YouTube. And just to give you like a point of reference, Jason Stevenson has some really good ones. I think most of his are on Spotify, but they're really relaxing. And the other thing is because I think my brain is now used to the sleep meditations being a signal to go to sleep. If I wake up in the middle of the night, again, if Kiko's yelling at me or somebody, one of the dogs is mad about something, if I put the sleep meditation on, I find that I fall asleep very quickly. So I don't know if it's the meditation itself or it's because my brain has learned this is what you do before you sleep.
Do you do any of that 4-7-8 breathing? Is that part of this or that's totally separate?
I do that for other purposes just to relax myself. It depends. Every meditation, some of them may use that. But yes, that will sort of bring down your nervous system.
Yeah, because I really need to look into this more. I'm glad you brought this up. But I do the 4-7-8. I think it's called something specific. I can't think of what the name of it actually is, but I do that. And like I literally, maybe I'll do like 3 or 4 rounds of it, and it really helps. And so I want to up the game, and I think sleep meditations is on my list.
Yeah, and there's some that are actually, it's not my preference, but I know that there's some that's almost like a story or a journey. So I think it's just designed to get you to focus on something else and just sort of go along with it rather than the thoughts that keep you awake, because we all have those. So we talked about this before when Dan shared his YouTube jacuzzi sounds, but in a similar vein to the way that I use sleep meditations, you can also use ambient noise. And so I know that sounds like a fancy word for noise, but it's really just a background sound that helps your brain chill out so you can fall asleep and stay asleep.
Right. Instead of total silence, which can make every little noise feel like an alarm bell, ambient noise kind of smooths out the soundscape around you. It gives your brain something consistent to focus on so sleep doesn't go, wait, what was that sound every 5 seconds?
Yeah. And some people are really, like, I'm sensitive to sounds. Some people are nervous about being home alone, and so everything kind of sets them off. So we just want to share quickly, there's a few different kinds, and you may have heard of some of these. There's white noise, pink noise, and brown noise.
So white noise, the one most people are familiar with is that steady sound like a fan or an air conditioner. And boy, do I love that sound. You put a fan on, I take one with me. I have a travel fan, and like once that thing goes on, that noise hits, that white noise, I am gone. So it's great for blocking out sudden noises, which makes it a lifesaver for light sleepers. Maybe Sandy for you.
Yeah.
I'm a full subscriber to white noise, as I just mentioned. A good box fan, maybe even a Vornado fan, which I subscribe to, are great. And so this again, I'll throw it out, the bedtime burrito. You get the fan and get me under those sheets in the burrito, I am good to go.
I mean, I don't know. I like a fan on. I have an overhead fan on, but too much air hurts my neck. And so not really
air hurts your neck?
Like it's cold air.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I feel like people are going to learn way too much about me. I'm going to have to go into hiding. Okay, so we're going to move on. Next is pink noise, which I actually just learned about. It's something I think most people know white noise, but these next two are maybe a little bit more obscure. But that's basically a softer and deeper, sort of a steady rainfall or ocean waves. And it feels more natural and soothing, and studies show that it can actually help you get into deeper stages of sleep. So remember, we want that. So yay for the pink noise. I actually have, and I've had this for a while, a little waterfall next to my bed because I really find that the sound of the water is very soothing. So I guess that's my pink noise.
So at last we have brown noise, goes even deeper. Think thunder in the distance or a waterfall rumble. It's grounding, kind of like an audio weighted blanket. Really love, big fan of brown noise. Big fan.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of weighted blankets. Unrelated, but you said it, so I had to share. So I actually use brown noise, not a lot, but occasionally when I feel like my mind just won't stop spinning because it kind of calms everything down. And you can find them, like, I think you could probably find them on the meditation apps, but you could also just look up any of these noise colors on Spotify, YouTube, or other sleep designated apps. So you just look for your color.
The trick is to keep the volume low, so you shouldn't hear it. You should almost feel it, just enough to take the edge off the silence.
And like everything in the sleep journey, it's personal. So you might have to try a few and kind of see which one your nervous system relates to best. And one other thing on the topic of sound, I find this interesting too. There are certain sound frequency ranges for sleep that are ideal. And you can also look these up online. I know you can, I do them on Spotify, but just we want to give you a little, since we're talking about this, we just wanted to share a few different things. So there's delta waves, which is between 0.5 and 4 hertz. And that's meant for deep sleep. So what it does is it slows down the brain activity, helps promote physical recovery, and deepens sleep cycles again. These are all of the things that we want. So you can search this again on any app and find these sounds. And they're actually in a range of, there's something also, they're called binaural beats. So they're best to be listened to with some sort of earphones or heads, anything that like, because you hear sounds from both sides. I think it's probably still effective without that, but it's just sort of a thing to look for. And there's also theta waves, which is between 4 and 7 hertz. And that's more for light sleep, sort of a hypnotic state. So a lot of times meditation music will have something of this nature. It basically helps you transition from wakefulness to sleep again. If you're someone that has trouble falling asleep, that might be good. So it's that like floaty, half dreaming feeling. And they're linked to creativity, intuition, and emotional release. So you basically just use it for winding down, like I mentioned, meditation or napping. So I was mentioning about the binaural beats. I'm very sensitive as I sleep, and I am a side sleeper. And so I have my regular AirPods, which are not comfortable for sleeping on. So I bought a set of what was designated as sleep earphones, and they're supposed to be low profile, but I still feel that I find those very uncomfortable. I'm aware of them, so obviously that's the opposite of what I want. So with the dog barking, I recently bought a sleep headband. And so it's almost like a athletic headband, but it has flat little round speakers where your ears are. So it's not noise canceling, but it allows me to have my meditation on and drown out at least some of the sounds for the dogs.
So no one can see us at the moment, probably, but I think we're going to have a sleep Halloween on this podcast where I'm going to wear my gaming glasses and Sandy's going to wear her sleep headband.
It just looks like a headband. It's not that interesting. It's like people, put on a headband to wash their face and keep their hair back. But maybe we'll do sleep Halloween. Okay.
Wait, you had earphones? You had actually like big earphones you'd put on, or
no? They're like earbuds.
Okay, I got it.
So I bought one because when you think about something, Amazon or Facebook or whatever shows you all of those things. So I was getting a lot of ads for sleep, like AirPods kind of things. And they're lower profile, they're flatter, but they just still, they still poke into my ear. So
makes sense.
Wasn't what I was looking for.
Yep.
Okay. So next we move on to not drinking too much water at night, because I'm the person that you don't want to take on a road trip because I need to stop and pee like every couple hours. And so any previous road trip partners, like I apologize. For me, the best road trip, this is just a tangent, but if anybody wants to go on a road trip, I need an RV because then I've got the bathroom there. I can pee every 2 hours. I can drink as much water as I want. And I have all the snacks. So you can't go wrong. But obviously, like if I get up to pee 5 times a night, that's disrupting my sleep. It's happening in the middle of sleep cycles. Maybe then I have to worry about falling back to sleep. So what I've started to do is try and make sure that my water intake is earlier in the day. And I take some, obviously, the magnesium. I'm taking supplements at night, but I'm trying not to chug an entire bottle of water right before I go to sleep.
This is a really good one. I am slowly but surely, not slowly, actually very quickly, realizing that I do drink water before I go to sleep. I do have one awakening and have to go to visit the bathroom at night. And I kind of suspect when I was talking about my new middle insomnia that this might be the culprit, is getting up, going to the bathroom and not being able to fall back asleep, and then essentially being awake. So this is a really good one.
Anytime you wake up, you risk not falling back to sleep. So just as much as you can limit that, you want to. And then kind of in that same vein, we were talking about water, also food. So I was always kind of a night person. And even now, I'm not a breakfast person. Like I can't eat in the morning. It's gross to me. So I eat later in the day, but also because I was a night person, I was staying up later and I was eating late at night. And I've noticed it's very clear to me when I eat a heavy meal too close to my bedtime, it really interferes with my sleep. Like I feel crazy. I am hot then, I would need to turn down the air conditioning and I don't fall asleep, or I fall asleep when I'm waking up. And so again, did a little bit of research on this, and basically digestion is what keeps your body on, right? Like it should power down your body when you go to sleep, but when you're digesting, your body's still doing all the things. It's like, I got stuff to do, we can't sleep yet. So I actually feel in that line, I feel more anxiety and I feel very unsettled and I have all these crazy thoughts. And I wake up multiple times, probably because my cortisol and blood sugar spike. And we talked about this in the last episode. That could wake you up. So, I've tried, I have to, this is a tough one for me because, again, I mentioned I don't eat breakfast. And so my big meal is usually between 1 and 2 o'clock. So in the evening, I can get a little bit hungry, but I try and just have a light snack, and make sure that it's maybe 2 to 3 hours before I go to sleep so that I'm not having these issues.
I would say that the one thing that will get me to eat late is alcohol. Going back to the alcohol piece.
For sure.
If I'm even like 2 to 3 drinks in and just even buzzed, for whatever, like some people like have different reactions to alcohol. Mine's like, oh my God, where's Taco Bell? Where's that 12 pack? Like, so I don't do that much anymore, obviously. But like, if that is just horrible for you, and so it's alcohol and food, and you're just destroying any chance of good sleep. So you made me think about that.
Yeah. I mean, if I drink, then I make all of the worst food life choices anyone could ever make. So that goes. And the other thing is, I notice, like, if I'm not eating healthy, or if I've had a really heavy meal the night before, I wake up in the morning and I'm very groggy. If I'm eating sort of a clean diet and I'm not overeating, that I do have, even though I still struggle with mornings, I do have more energy in the morning. So again, something that I've really noticed a actual correlation with. And then we're going to talk about, again, something that Dan had mentioned. This is sunlight in the morning. And this is what tells your body, it's a circadian rhythm thing. When you get sunlight first thing in the morning, it's telling your body to wake up. And so we talked about the melatonin, and it's literally the thing that is signaling to your body to shut down the melatonin. So I try and go for a morning walk. It's harder sometimes depending on what time I need to get up, because I don't do well super early morning, so I don't have a lot of adjustments. So if I have to, I'll just go stand outside for a little bit. But I like to go for a walk. And for me, the walks are kind of meditative. I try to relax and appreciate the surroundings. I don't usually listen to music, but mostly I'm focused on getting the morning sunlight.
I would say that this tip right here, along with the 10-minute to 20-minute walk after you have a meal for the glucose, like these two types of things are just so bulletproof and so important. And if you can even do this morning walk or morning habit or routine without a hat or sunglasses, even better. But each person to their own. But this is such an important point.
Yeah. And the other thing that's actually interesting is not only does it slow down or stop the melatonin, it sets a clock. So when you're getting sunlight in the morning, it's telling your nighttime self when it's time to go to bed, meaning like 14 to 16 hours later. So it really sets your entire circadian rhythm in the right direction. And it also does some things like it regulates hormones and mood. So, when you get morning sunlight, you feel better. So yay. And if you feel better, you might have a better day and then less anxiety, which could actually lead to better sleep. And then it improves energy and focus. So same thing, like don't feel so sluggish. It allows you to get on a good schedule and feel better in the morning. Okay. So we're getting kind of closer to the end. But the next one for me, I am very sensitive to caffeine. So I've learned that I can't have caffeine past a certain time. And for me, that sweet spot is around noon. So I don't drink coffee because it makes me very jittery and anxious. I do drink a matcha, which it's a little bit milder and it has other things in it that relax you. But I can't, if I had matcha at like 2 o'clock or later, I just wouldn't sleep. I mean, I know there's people who have coffee at dinner, and that's wild to me because mouth drops open. I'm shocked every time that they could just have caffeine and then be like, I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah, there are some people that just are beasts with caffeine like that. Like people like just have like Cokes until like midnight. And I know a couple people like that. I used to drink Diet Coke, and so I was kind of like that. But yeah, I think the common wisdom floating around is two things. One is don't have caffeine first thing in the morning. Get those electrolytes, get that water in, and then delay the caffeine like 90 minutes. This is kind of common wisdom through some of the health practitioners that you may have heard on podcasts or otherwise. And the other thing is maybe cut off that caffeine. For Sandi, it's 12. For me, it's probably like 3 p.m. But there's a half-life of caffeine that like it stays in your system. I'm not sure how many hours that is, but for me, 3 p.m. is the absolute cutoff.
I definitely know it's a huge difference. I know when to time it, and so then we're good. All right. So the next one is one that actually also really helps. just in terms of how I feel the next day. And I hate to admit it because, as I mentioned, like, I am not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. Morning people confuse me and fascinate me at the same time. And I'm jealous of them because I think it would be cool to wake up really excited about the day and feeling well rested and jumping out of bed and going, yay. But that's not me. So I declared, to myself and the world that I was a night person. So I used to go to bed very late if I didn't have to wake up the next day. And that was, like, by very late, I mean usually after midnight. And so I learned something recently that changed my perspective on bedtime. And more importantly, it changed my behavior because, I was resistant to it, but I tested it out and it's making a difference. So this is just some science, because science is fun. Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., your body enters what's called the golden window of sleep. So, we want that, right? So what happens is it performs your deepest physical repair work. And here's what's happening. And I share this because it's important so that you don't want to miss, these things. You want your body to do these things at night. So one of them is growth hormone. So you need that for tissue repair and muscle recovery. Melatonin, we mentioned, it's at its highest levels during this peak time. The liver and lymphatic system perform their best detox and cleansing work. We want that. And immune regulation and cell regeneration ramp up. So if you're staying awake late and you delay those processes, meaning you go to bed later and those things happen later, you're really missing the best part of restorative sleep. So again, I love late night, but I also like to be a functional human. So if you miss that window, even if you get 8 hours of sleep, you're really missing that peak time. And so that's the good stuff. And I'm a fan of that. So that's been my sleep journey. It's not perfect. It's not linear, but there's definitely been progress. I used to have a lot of trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, and just sleeping. Hopefully some of the things that have worked for me will also work for you. Insomnia is a very lonely place. And we know we threw a lot of information at you. I just wanted to make sure that we gave you kind of a well-rounded thing. And I thought it was important to share what helps me. It's not meant to overwhelm you. This is so that you can take what you like and leave the rest. You don't need to do all of the things. Start with one. What sounds easiest? What do you resonate with? What do you connect with?
And that is the exact reason we love doing this. Because every time one of your messages to us says, I thought I was the only one, it reminds us we're building something bigger than a podcast. It's the Health Hunt community. We want to hear from you.
We're just a group of people trying to figure out how to feel human again, one honest conversation at a time. And next week, in part 3 of our sleep series, we're digging into the science meets soul side of it. It's how stress, emotions, and even old patterns can mess with your rest. Basically, the stress, the stories we tell ourselves, and why your brain won't stop replaying that awkward conversation from 2014 when you should be sleeping. Mostly me, will be geeking out on the mind-body side of sleep.
So during this podcast, if you've been nodding along or maybe just nodding off, again, you're welcome if we helped you actually fall asleep during our podcast. Make sure you follow this podcast so you don't miss the finale of our sleep series. I'm really excited to hear about what Sandi's got to say for this week.
And if you've connected with this episode, share it with someone who's chasing better sleep. We love hearing your stories, especially if you have some kick-ass tricks that work or something that we've shared have helped you. You can email us at info@thehealthhunt.com or message us on social media at healthhunt_podcast. So I need to take a nap now. Until next time, sleep well and stay curious.